All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best Self Blueprint. So, anyone who tunes in already knows the mission of this podcast is to bring on people who have the knowledge, insights, and experiences that will help you move that dial towards becoming the best version of yourself, whatever that means for you. So, today we have a massage therapist, Reiki, energy healing, monster of mindfulness. Amy, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am good. I'm ready to get into this one. I think especially just with COVID and with Ukraine and with all of these chaotic things happening on top of technology and people just always like escaping into very energy mess upping things.
Yes, that's a thing.
There's a major disconnect with a lot of people with their authentic energy, what they're meant to feel like. What are a few, like, from what you've seen with clients or just with people in general, like we were talking about, like common mistakes that you see people make, whether it's in the gym or with what they eat or with who they associate with, or just like in general, how people are living?
I feel like a lot of it is people don't listen to their gut instincts. That's a very profound thing, and that's a very energetic thing that people don't often listen to. They are very much about, when they're starting to get into like the energy side of things, they're more like, yeah, I totally do this, but then they don't trust it. Everybody has their energetic vibe, and that's what this whole world lives off of. Trees and grass and the sun, we all have energy, and it's those vibrations that we live off of and go off of each other. And if that's not being followed, your intuition and your gut instinct and things like that, they're going to basically be tampered. And when you finally start realizing that it's not about what ego wants, it's about what the soul is actually needing, that's when you start getting into like the better part of life. Because then you can see, like, when you meet somebody, you're like, yeah, I can totally vibe with them. Unlike somebody, when you meet them and you're like, we all need to be nice and caring. But then you also have to realize there's a deeper side of them that you need to realize, and you kind of need to guard yourself at first, so where you know how to balance them with you. Because it's not always just about like, let's be nice to everybody. And yes, we want to be loving and kind and not judge somebody, but you have to listen to that gut instinct, because yes, they may be nice for you right now, but later on, that is not what you need. And people often misjudge that and think that we need to do that. And it kind of goes the same thing with food and just general exercise and things like that. People don't listen to the body. Recently I just came across the sensitivity test from Everlywell, not sponsored, by the way. But I found that, I have like 14 different foods that I shouldn't be eating that. And in this past week, I've taken most of it out, and my body has considerably gone down in swelling, and between headaches and waking up and feeling actually like energized to be awake. Like, that's huge. It's just insane about like listening to the body and realizing that, hey, this is what you actually need, not what you want. So ego and soul are just like in a constant battle to be who wants to be up front. And it's not so much about who needs to be up front, it's about a balance of listening to one and honoring the other.
Yeah, that's something I have completely lived what you were talking about with, like, the more you neglect your intuition, I think almost like the more it's just like, all right, if you're not going to listen to me, we're just going to like hang out in the background here.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it gets to the point where your intuition almost just turns into like, I think about like if you're doing something wrong, your friend's like, no, stop, don't. Whatever, because like you've trained it to get to the point where it just accepts the fact that you're not going to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And like any family member, close friend, anyone giving you advice, no matter how much it's trying to help, if you continue to just like tell it to shut up, I've experienced when I've been in really deep misalignment, and you still get that feeling, you get that like almost like gut rot feeling when you know you're out of it or you're denying it, but it gets so quiet and so familiarized that like at that point for people who really haven't been cultivating a connection with their intuition and with that gut feeling, what are a few ways for them to at least like start going back into that? Is it as simple as when it pops up, just like trust it and go for it? Or are there other like tricks or things that people can do to start really leveraging it more?
So, I mean, a lot of it is like trusting it, and by whenever it does pop up, because that's you honoring it then, but also realizing the like what you're getting out of it at the end. So it's not so much like, yes, you can have maybe something really crappy does happen after you honor it, but look at the whole experience while you're doing it, because maybe right in that instance of you listening to that, you're sitting there and you're like, no, that just did not happen right. But what is the end result? Because the end result is what you're needing to get to. And even just like sitting there and listening to like meditations, like you have plenty of them on YouTube. I mean, everybody listens to them.
YouTube.
And that is huge when it comes to being there and being present. And, you know, and it's just as it's easy as looking up for, you know, intuition meditations or things like that. But I mean, even like going out and about, like when you're selecting food and you're like, do I want that or that? And just being like, which one seems happier to me? It's normally whichever one is like calling to you. It's something that you're like, you know, I really keep coming back to this and I'm just not wanting to let it go. Like that is something that you should probably, you know, pick up in your life. I was in La Crosse a couple of months back and we were at a rock shop and I kept coming back around to this beautiful labradorite necklace. And I just was like, nope, I need to pick that up. And I love it. Like every time I wear it, I'm just like, oh, it just brings me happiness. So it's just about following what you love. It's not what you need. It's what your body. So it's like, or not what your body wants, it's what your body needs at the time. So it's huge because it's just accepting that we have that energetic vibration coming through us and it's vibrating towards something better. And it's always that vibrating towards something better that you're looking for.
Yeah, so this is what really fascinates me about, I guess, increasing like your frequency, right? So we talk about like being high vibe and like kind of doing things like that. The other way I talk about it is like turning up your thermostat in life. So going from like what I call like a 65-degreer to like a 90-degreer, meaning like you're just like living bigger, you're more passionate about what you're doing, you're more aligned with what you're doing. And you, with my very specific form of what I define success as, you're more successful.
Right.
What's fascinating to me about that is most people tie that to your ego. Like the more you buy into the egoic, like chasing money and making sure that you've got a bunch of money in the bank account and being selfish in terms of like making sure that your skill set is what it needs to be. Now, what I've found funny about that is you can pursue the same exact things with a completely different intention behind it. How do you think people can make that switch? Because for me, what I found was as long as I was which for the longest time I was doing this, like chasing money for the sake of, if I have a lot of money, people will respect me more, or if I can, you know, do this bigger athletic challenge, people will like me more or respect me more, or things like that. And it was very egoic. And as long as I did that, I felt, first of all, not even passionate about it, because it was out of this like negative energy field, I guess, if you will, that it was like pushing me towards that stuff. Why is that? Like, for the lack of a better term, why is it that when we're chasing it with ego, we're a lot less likely to get it, or when we get it, we feel so unfulfilled, as opposed to if we pursue things out of intuition, we're more likely to get it. And on top of that, we're much more fulfilled when we do get it.
So when that's happening, so part of it is when we all come down here, our souls are kind of like on this journey of the lessons that we need to learn. So when you're being drawn to something soul wise, that, and when you finally accomplish it, that's why it's more like, yes, I nailed it. But like when you're doing it ego wise, it's because you're doing it for what other people want you to do, not what you want to do. When you have, so like ego is all about how others see you, how others are wanting you to do better, how others are wanting everything for you.
And quick side note, it's what you think others think you should be doing.
Yes.
So it's this huge like triple filtered process too.
Yes. And it's horrible, just a horrible, like people often are like, well, you know, Joe Schmo was like, yeah, you would totally be great at this. But then you look at it and you're like, yeah, I would be really good at it. But it's like, is that what you need? Like, is that what your soul absolutely needs and needs to be fulfilled with? Like everybody can be seen doing something and can be seen doing a lot of things, but it's more so like, what is your soul purpose? Like, what is it that you're coming down here to show and to learn and to go through so that way you can, you know, be that better person. So when you're accomplishing things based off of like how you're needing to get them done and not how others get them done, it becomes a more fulfilling experience because the lessons you're learning while going through that path is so much more intense, because then you're like, oh, I finally get it. Like, this is why we don't do it this way and we do it that way. Like, people can give you like small little inside niches and little hints and things like that, but it's you that has to take those, pick apart whatever you want. And it sounds like a lot, but and when you first start out, it's kind of like, oh, this is just so much. But when you start getting the hang of it and realizing like, oh, okay, this is not good for me, I'm just going to push it aside, compared to now where you're just like, you can easily just like pick apart things and be like, yeah, I'll go with that. And again, it goes with your intuition of, hey, you know, this feels right, this doesn't feel right. And that's when it just starts going out and you feel so much better about life, because when you're done, it makes you feel better. Like, it just, you have so much more joy and you don't feel so judged by everybody else. And it's more about what you need, what you have to accomplish. And as long as you're accomplishing what you're absolutely needing, that's all that really matters. And then people become more like, oh, I really want to be like that guy, or I really want to be like her, because they've got their shit together. You know, like they're like, yeah, I got this, I'm nailing it, I'm doing this, this, and this, because they're not worried about the ego side of what everybody else thinks. They're just on their path, doing their thing. And then that's how you get more like-minded people around you, because that is where, you know, when you're doing those things, then you're like, hey, you want to come tag along? And then they'll tag along for like 4 or 5 months and they'll be like, all right, I'm good now. And that's how you become out there, and that's how you become like more around people, because it's not always just about like, it's not like, it's always about your lesson, but it's also about other people learning little snippets from everybody else to get to that primary goal.
Yeah, my journey and what I found through leaning into intuition, because I'm at the point now where I'd say the vast majority of the time I'm able to do that. You know very well there are a couple things that I'm not yet, yes. But for the most part, I definitely am able to leverage my intuition and really be patient and sit with it for like a almost disturbing amount of time, yes, when it comes to big decisions. And early on, when I didn't have a good relationship with my intuition and with, you know, with God, with my beliefs around the universe and things like that, it almost felt like jumping off a cliff, hoping that there was like a parachute floating somewhere that you could just grab on the way down. Yeah. And so you first take that jump, and honestly, like for a while, you don't see the parachute anywhere. Like all you see is the fact that you're flying towards a cliff, because I don't necessarily think it's right away when you start leaning into it that people like really respect you or praise you. I think at first people think you're batshit crazy because you're going away from everything that makes sense, right? Like that's logical, that's realistic, that's safe. And so for me, when I did that, I went from a very well-paying job to like making basically nothing because I knew that I wanted to pursue health and fitness. And for a couple of years, it was very much like parents questioning it, whether they said it or not, parents questioning it, friends questioning it, and just wondering like, is he even going to be okay? Like, is he going to make something of himself? And now fast forward 6 years of really leveraging my intuition, leveraging my connection with flow state, with optimal performance, with all of these things. Now I have people coming up to me all the time that are like, oh, you're so lucky, I'm so proud of you, all this stuff. And it's like, interesting, huh? Yeah. But so I think that's something that's important for people to know too, is like the reason it's so scary at the beginning is because it's meant to be. Like I think in order to really achieve a life that is like your dream life, you're going to get tested. And a big part of that test is, how committed are you to doing this when everyone's looking at you like you have like drawing on your face, and you just like, they're looking at you like you're an alien basically.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Is that something that you see as like common with people, or is that very unique to me? Because I feel like I know a lot of people who they step into it and for a while they do feel very like alone, because like you were talking about, they've shedded the people who like really have no healthy purpose in their life, but they haven't yet attracted like that new like authentic tribe. And so they very much do feel lost and isolated. Is that a common thing, or was that just my experience?
No, it is a common thing. It's mainly just because you're trying to sit with your vibration. You're trying to see like where you're at and to learn who you are. I know that in just my own experiences, because when I was a child, I saw a lot of spirits and angels and things. And as I was a child, I was like, whoa, we're not doing this. This is not okay. Because as a kid, you're just like, no. And then Sixth Sense came out when I was a kid as well. And I'm like, oh my God. So that was like just pushed off, like completely pushed off. And it wasn't until after high school, then I got into the military. And I mean, I still hadn't gotten into like intuition, so to speak, but it was more of, it was more of like my tribe of people, because they all were very like-minded. And it was very, people were like, yeah, I got your back. Like those were the people that I needed at the time, because they're like, we're going to get you through anything. We're going to go do the stuff that we need to do. But also with me being in the military, that's how I found my husband. And with that is where then I got pregnant and things like that. And I came out and I came back to doing massage therapy. And massage therapy is where I learned to get my intuition again, because when I came out of the military, I was like, what do I do? Like I had no idea what to do. And the only reason I went through massage therapy, I was like, I really did like do massage when I was a kid. Like when I was in all of my sports, that's what we did. We were like, hey, are you tight? All right, well, we'll just massage. And I enjoyed it a lot. And when I actually went through schooling, I came across one of the girls was a medium, and she was just like, you have a very special touch. And she's kind of started mentoring me there. And I was like, oh, all right. And then my husband passed away before I even graduated. And at that point, I had to make a really huge decision. Like, do I keep following this, or do I get a big girl job? Because now I had 2 kids and I'm sitting here and I'm like, what do I do? And I was completely just gone. And so I continued to push it off. Like, I sat there with her, with my mentor, kind of like, hey, what do I need to do? Because I want to start getting into this. But then I was also like, I was being drawn down this other path because I knew I needed to do something else for my kids mainly, because of course you need insurance and money in this lovely world of ours. And because of that, I started getting into Reiki. And Reiki is an amazing process of just learning, how energies and doing visualizations and things like that. But also while I was on this other process of, just being able to pay for my kids, I was able to do other classes. Like I was able to do like a cranial sacral class out in Minnesota where we did like past life regressions, and we learned how to do like energy blocking clearing, and we did this. So yes, I was meant to go down some sort of energy path. It just wasn't at that time. So like in the long run, yeah, I was meant to go through massage therapy school, but not for that time, because I tried my own business there. That didn't fly, not at all. It was like, no, you're going to get 4 clients and that's all it's going to be. And I was like, this isn't going to work. So, between doing Reiki and cranial sacral classes and learning how to do other classes to help me be that better person and stay in tune with the human body. So now we fast forward almost 10 years, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, because of all the experiences that I had in the past, even though I was like, this is just not for me, like what I was doing, I was always unhappy. I tried going back through for nursing school and I made it 1 semester shy of my BSN. And by the time I hit that semester, I was like, this is not for me. Like I could not do it. I was like, because I was still being drawn to that. I need to help people, but that was not the place I needed to help people. So now I'm going through health coaching, and I'm going through life coaching, and I'm helping people here, and just like having that, because now I'm feeling more fulfilled. Like I'm feeling that, like, yes, this is where I'm meant to be. Back then it was not. Like you have to learn those lessons before you get to that final chapter of, yep, you're good.
Yeah, and you know this very well about my personality and my relationship with my intuition, where I'm the one who I'll give into it, but I'll keep being like, but it's right there.
Yeah,
It's right there. And it's like, nope, not yet. And it's like a well enough trained dog that it'll sit there and not grab the chew toy, but it'll keep like wagging its tail and kind of like inching forward. I feel like that's me, where I've learned the hard way many times to not question your intuition, but I guess not enough times where I'm like, just like I'll question it, but I'll still trust it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of been my catch-22 with whether that's spirituality or belief in the afterlife or intuition and things like that, is at my core, like there's this undeniable knowing, but then as you get towards the surface, it's like, but what about this? What about that? What about this thing? How about over there? Huh? And it's like, you just kind of get this. And I think that's what's so beautiful about it, though, is this ability to question it and the challenge that's presented with it. But it really is one of those things, at least from my experience, where like once you really do develop a healthy relationship with, first of all, who you actually are, and not who you're trying to be or think you should be, but who you really authentically are and what lights you up. And you have that healthy connection with the right people, the right energies. I really think having that like fundamental, unwavering knowing that has your back, I think allows you that freedom to really question more things and be curious and explore.
Yes, that is a huge part of it. Even though you've had like this, well, what about this? What about that? What about all these things? That's part of the lesson. That's all. Like, even though you're seeing the end goal and it's like right there, you're like, I could touch it. I swear to God, I could touch it. And what are you going to do if I touch it? Like, the universe is going to be like, oh, you want to play games? Then we'll play games right back. And we're going to just pull it back a little bit further. And then now you're going to have to relearn all of these lessons all over again, because you didn't let it right the first time. And now you have to relearn these, because guess what? You were not supposed to do that. Not yet. Like, I mean, and that's just as simple as, being in certain relationships with people. I mean, you go out there and you're like, yeah, man, we've been buddies for 10 years, but they're like a total crap show for me. And this, and it's like, did you not just hear what you just said? Like, they're like the worst friend for you, but you've been friends for 10 years. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? Or the relationships of, like, people are dating and they know that these people aren't right for them, but yet they stay with them because they're like, well, we've been together for 6 months, so why not? Like, no.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the same with jobs. I have bounced around 1,000 times between different jobs, because by the time I'm just like, you know what, I'm just done with this. Like, I would much rather jump around between jobs and be happy within that, like, and yeah, this sounds horrible, but it was like a 4-year stint of like most jobs. But I was like, nah, I'm not feeling this anymore. You start having like those weird panic attacks and those burnouts and those things, and you're just like, this is not where I need to be. And in that 4 years, there's things that you learn. There's people that you met that you were supposed to meet. But that's what that little junction was for. Nothing more than just that little junction. And then everything past that, you bring along with you of things that you've learned into that next step. And that's where it really is, because it's like in those little divots and those little paths and all those little things, that's where you're learning your little lessons. And then you're bringing it back to that main path and continuing on.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say something, then we should probably get into my experience with what happened when we were kind of relieving that tension in my back. But this to me is one of the most sad things that I can see, is someone living without being alive.
Yes.
Or sorry, being alive without living. Whichever one.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying. But like the fact that people will spend years or decades even doing something that brings them no joy, simply to collect enough money to buy things they don't really want, to impress people they don't really even need to impress, is just the most saddening thing for me. And I think that segues into what happened in my experience. So I was doing a massage with Amy, and part of it was I told her I wanted energy healing too, just like something. And I said, like, I want to go deep. And you're like, all right, fair enough. So she starts feeling tension in my back, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but you were saying, like, how long have you been holding like the burden of other people? And I was just like, oh no, I mean, like, I don't really do that. I live my life and they live their life. And you're like, no, that's consciously, but what about subconsciously? And as soon as you pressed into my back, it was like that visualization where I was like, oh, I just see a waterfall and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden the rocks just like fell and blocked the fall. I'm like, yo, what is that? And it was because we were switching or shifting from my conscious thoughts to the subconscious thoughts that were underlying all of this tension emotionally and physically. And a big part of that was because I have such an eye for and a skill set for helping people become more aware and take action on aligning and pursuing a great life and the best version of themselves. Because of that, subconsciously, I was putting this immense amount of pressure from all of these people and things in my life, assuming that I needed to be the one to carry that burden for them because I knew I was strong enough to hold it for them, or maybe I thought I was being the hero and just alleviating some of their pain by taking it on myself. That part I still haven't fully figured out yet, but I think that practice in and of itself of finding physical tension and then working with someone like you who has that skill set and ability to guide you into whatever emotional tie that has. What is that like on your end? Because like for me, that was absolutely batshit crazy how like powerful and how accurate that was, because there was this undeniable feeling when you were saying what you were saying that it was so true for me, but my conscious mind just wasn't letting me experience it. Like it was blocking it out.
So on my end, for me, I'm not going to say it's not emotional because I mean, I constantly have to have like a guard up for me. So that way I'm not getting drugged into what you're doing. But it's nice. And I don't know, it's kind of loving and healing for me because I know that I'm helping you. And for you to finally, get past that ego side and get into like the molecular vibrations that you're going through, because it's like nobody realizes, well, I'm not going to say nobody. A large vast of the population does not realize that they're holding on to other people's crap. Like it really is, like it is literally other people that their emotions are being like sucked into them, and they're just like, oh, I really feel bad for them that this is going through, and then they just hold on to it, and it's like, that is not for you, that is for them to deal with. And yes, that kind of sounds harsh, but then you got to look at it like, but is it your lesson or is it their lesson? So yes, you can help them, but is it your lesson or is it their lesson? Like that is the big defining line. Because if it is your lesson to learn, all right, well, let's get through this. But if it's not, let it go, because that is not for you. That's not something that you need to work with. And like when I first started my massage business, that was part of my issue, was like, I was like, well, people just aren't doing what I'm telling them to do. That's not for me to learn. That's for them to learn. Like, I'm going to keep doing what I got to do to be the best person I am. But if they're not going to take what I'm telling them and to turn that into something better for themselves, that's entirely up to them. Like that is what, that's their lessons of what they need to go through. And I'm not going to be there to be like, all right, did you do this again? Did you do that again? I can be there in the background and be like, as a reminder, like, hey, just so you remember, don't push that button again, because that's going to be there. And even if it's just me like walking through your life as just like you seeing my face and you're like, oh, that's right, I was doing that. Because those are like the small little reminders. So like when you're going through your life and you constantly keep seeing something repetitively, that's the universe saying, hey, pay attention to this, because that is something that you need to physically focus on. Like if you're constantly being drawn to something, go do it, have fun. Like to have that taken, like to have that shield of, I have to do this because the world is telling me to, just stop. Like just stop where you're at and just be like, take that breath and just kind of like push everything else away and stop thinking of what your physical being needs, and just drop back into being like, what is it that I absolutely need? And like, what is it that I absolutely have to do in my life for me to realize like, this is where I need to go? And are the people, the things that I have, is everything that's surrounding me in that nature, is that worth what I'm going through right now? Like that, I mean, and it really is. It's like, what is your self-worth? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
And that's really huge, because it's like, if you feel like your self-worth of where you're at is not being upheld, especially by your job, like that's a huge one. That's a huge drainer. A lot of people just stay in a job because they get a paycheck. Well, guess what? That paycheck, it's not fulfilling. You're just like, yep, I got my bills, I'm paying them, and I can just do whatever I want. But it's like, is it allowing you to do what you want? Because if you're not being able to do what you want, what is the purpose of being there? What is the purpose of everything else that you've had to learn or going to learn by sitting in this very draining job?
Yeah. And I will say, I get some pushback because, again, I'm in my mid-20s. I'm single. I don't have pets aside from my plant Carlos. Shout out to Carlos. So like it is much easier for me to build this life, right? And like invest my time and money and resources into these practices. But I really think it's a lesson for everyone to learn, where like I'm at the point where I simply think about, what is my dream lifestyle? What is it requiring me to do to get there? And how do I set up achieving those requirements in a way that's enjoyable and fulfilling to me.
Yeah.
And I think if you can set up that foundation in your life and that's what you base things off of, I really think you're bulletproof in terms of, obviously there's still going to be challenges.
Oh yeah.
You can't really avoid that. Like that's what makes life exciting, but it really minimizes the stress, and it allows you to essentially put controlled stress and turn it into sometimes even like fun, exciting, adventurous challenge, as opposed to thinking about this is so draining, this sucks. It's like, no, like I'm tired, but I'm amped at the same time. Now, as someone, because like you were talking about, you've got kids, you've got a full-time job, and now for you to step into this healer role in an entirely new fashion at the gym, one conversation we had that really lit me up was when you were talking with Kat during her reading with you about just, again, like the whole concept of letting that ego go and thinking about the intuition of what is best for me in this moment. And you just kind of did that leap of faith where you were like, all right, it's time for me to really start making like a big jump into this new role of mine. What is that like for you? Because inevitably there are going to be people listening to this who are closer to where I'm at with like borderline no responsibilities outside of myself, which I'm very happy about at this point. But I also think there's going to be people listening who are in your shoes where they have kids, they have a 50-hour-a-week job that they're required to go to for, like we were talking about, the bills they have to pay, their insurance, their whatever else they have going on. What's your advice to that dynamic, that group?
So I have a previous client, well, not previous, like I'm working on her now. And she is not, like, she's got a family and she's got kids and she's got a job, and her job is not healthy. It's not healthy for her. You know, she's, you know, like one of the top money makers for her business, but they're not using her properly. You know, they're basically, they're just kind of like, yeah, you keep doing you, but we're not going to include you in any of the meetings. We're not going to do anything for you as far as like giving you props, none of it. Like they'll bump her and go to other people that aren't doing nearly half the things that she's doing. And it's like, no, that's not, if you're being put down in your company because they just don't want to listen to you, that's not a place for you. Like that is not where you need to be. You need to go out and you need to look for what you want. So like when I was going through this, you know, because I worked down at the VA and I was getting very stagnant. Like I just was not like, I was not fulfilled with what I was doing because I work second shifts. That way I can get more money for the bills. And that way during, like, I can bring my kids to school. And then on the weekends, I have all morning with them. But then it was just kind of like, this is just getting very draining. Like this was not what I wanted to do. And, you know, a couple months back, I was giving Justin a massage, and it was just like, he was just like, you know, you were really meant to do this. Like, if you want to come in and do this, you can absolutely come and do it. And this was like a huge sign for me, because it was like, I was applying for all these applications at the VA to get out of where I was at to go do something else. And I kept getting turned down, and I'm like, what is going on? And then I have Justin here who's like, you can come here, like it's open. And I was like, oh, a duh. Like, how are we not paying attention to this? That's that whole like universe saying, follow what you need, not what you want. Because even though I wanted to be at the VA and just do what I needed to do there, that was not fulfilling. And the universe saw that, and it was like, what are you doing? Like, so then I come here, and within a month and a half, my entire schedule got booked. So right now, yeah, I'm in like this weird, uncomfortable transition of trying to come over here full time, but I'm still doing that. But it's like, so I almost have like full-time hours here already. Like, you guys see me here all the dang time. And so I'll leave here by 2, to get ready for work. And then I worked from 4 to midnight. And then I started all over the next day. But right now it's in a transition of going from that like stagnant to bringing it over into like the energy and the massage and all of that for me to be healthy. And yes, it's not going to be just an overnight flip. Like that's just, it's not how life works, you know, because even though you want this to happen, you have other parties that are being brought into this, and you have to wait for them. Sadly, you have to wait for them, especially when you have, you know, a family and kids and all these crazy bills and a mortgage and things like that. Like, you know, make sure you have that happy foundation in your life. Like, you know, you have that husband that's there to help you, or the wife that's there to help you, because if they're not there being a supporter for you, it's going to be even harder. And, you know, I'm not one to say like, you know, just break off the health, you know, a relationship, but it's also like, you need to start your foundation. You have to have a strong foundation in order to build where you need to go. Because if you have a faulty foundation, it's just going to crumble underneath you. Because at some point when you're happy, that foundation is eventually going to crumble, and then you're going to have to start all over because you did not build that proper foundation first.
There are so many different ways I want to take what you just said. So I'll start with this. Another really important lesson that I got from our work together, and we've had a couple different major breakthroughs for me, which, quick side note, there's a lot of places I'm going to go in this little rant. But what's fascinating to me is working with you has truly humbled me, because I think as someone who essentially lives in the self-development space and is so blessed to get to spend my day and my time earning money, learning about how to optimize life and like all the different areas and subcategories of it, there is this ego attachment to like the growth that's involved in that and the rate of that growth. And so for me, I've kind of come to that almost plateau for the past few months where I'm like, you know, I think I've got most of it figured out, like all the big stuff I've got dialed in. And then in 2 or 3 sessions like that, it was like, you know nothing. I was like, oh, right, yeah. And so I think it really just, like, again, working with someone who is at a high level, even if you yourself are at a high level, will show you things just based on how they approach it or their methods or their perspective of a certain thing that'll be completely revolutionary. And so I wanted to start with that. But in that same session with the whole back and the burden and all of that, what you were telling me about is when I would pick up these rocks, I would see like a person's name on it or a thing in my life that is causing like a load in terms of like a burden. And you essentially asked me like, do you want this thing still to be in your life? Like, do you feel that it should stay there, or do you feel that it should not? And I was looking at a rock that had like an old friend's name on it. And it was one of those things where I could see it starting to dissolve. I'm like, no, I want that person in my life. And you said, they'll still be in your life. This is you no longer holding the burden of like the emotional attachment to all of their problems. That's when I was like, yup, and it just dissolved. And so I think that's where, first of all, like, don't take everything so seriously, right? Like I was getting so serious about like, I don't want this person to never see me again. I want to,
right.
you know,
like
hang
it was
out
a
with
black
them.
and white thing, and it's never a black and white thing.
So I think it's very much like you get to define the terms in that, where like you can still be friends with these people, you can still spend time with these people, but do it on terms that actually make you feel good. So for me, if I had a busy day and the night before I went and hung out with this group, there's no way that I'd go do the things I need to do, because we were out celebrating and hanging out and just having a good time. And I still believe in that. Like, I'm not going to say I never drink or do anything like that, but there's friends of mine that are almost like designated for that role. And then there are friends who are designated for fitness and for spiritual practice. And I think the more clearly defined those roles get and the more communicative you can be with the people in your life about that, in a way that's not like the only thing you're good for is drinking. So I'm just going to do that with you. But just saying, like, no, you're someone who is like meant for like celebration. And that's how I view it. So clearly defining the roles, being very open and communicative about that. But then one thing that you said that really stood out to me was it's not going to happen overnight. I think this is a lesson that as frequently as it's talked about, it needs to be talked about more.
Yeah.
Where I always go back to, I'm like, although I use social media, I hate social media for a lot of reasons. And one of them is there is this instant gratification, artificial dopamine flush, like all of these things that come from social media and the internet and just how fast and instantaneous everything is nowadays, that people think that gratification for big challenging projects should be the same. Where if you're trying to make a huge change in your life, after 3 weeks, it doesn't happen. You're like, screw it. I gave it my best effort. I'm done. I'm out. And it's like, that is not at all how this works. If you really are going for something big, which obviously I encourage, like, that's kind of what my life is about, is going big. But it's knowing that in doing that, you need to be patient. And that doesn't mean being complacent. That means still like working hard towards your goals, but having patience through the faith that it's already done.
Yeah. And the old saying of go big or go home, I feel like that, yes, brought in it, but also like you also have to take that with a grain of salt as well, because in order for you to go big, sometimes you need to take that step and take those small chunks to go big. And it's crazy because like the things that happen and the things that we go through, it's just amazing to watch, like, and hear the people's stories. And people tell me all the time, they're just like, we're in awe of you, Amy. And then I look at them like, why? Like, why would you be in awe of me? Like everything that I've gone through, but they're like, you have your life together in a fact, in a way of like, you don't let your past lives or like the things that you've done hold you back. And I'm like, I mean, we're living this life. You got to learn what you got to learn. It's not about living in the past. It's not about living, like, you can take the lessons you learn there. I know, right? It's crazy. You take those lessons and then you apply it to your future, but you don't live in the past. Like, that's horrible. That is like the worst thing. Like people that just get stuck in the past and they're like, well, this happened, so I'm not going to do it this way. And it's like, this is a whole new situation. You know, like that's not this. 4 + 5 = 9, but so does 7 + 2. There's so many ways you can go around things. It's funny to me because it's like so many people just get stuck in like that one track mind, and it's like you can't get stuck there. Like it's just, there's so many things that there's so many variables in life, and there's just so many things that can happen, and you just got to kind of like just go with it.
Yeah. First things first, I made that face because I hiccuped and it just really caught me off guard. So for anyone who saw that, there you go. But no, and I think like what you talked about, so naturally when I'm doing these bigger things like soloing cliffs or doing these 48 run challenges or like things like that, people will say that's so intense and that's so crazy, which like, yeah, it is when you're doing it, but the build up to it is so incremental that by the time you get to doing that, like when I was doing, so I soloed a 60-foot cliff. In doing that, I bouldered a 10-foot cliff 50 times. Then I moved up to 15 feet, then to 20 feet, then to 30 feet. And then once I hit 30 feet, that's when I'm like, all right, well, I could die from 30, I could die from 60. So now we're just going to go for it. And so, but it is this very like, and with these run challenges, it's not like I just all of a sudden like buy a pair of running shoes and start like running 50 miles. It's incrementally increasing your training and dialing in on your nutrition and your recovery and doing these things in a way so that you build up your tolerance to the intensity of the situation. And I think that's just where people need to realize like that patience that I was talking about, and then also just the ability to forget your past, in terms of not forget, the ability to let go to the attachment of limitations your past tries to put on you. is so important with stuff like that.
Yes. Past, sorry, just like living in the past in general is just, there's points to it, and dreaming will let you go into past so much, and it's there to kind of help you let go. It's there to, it's there as a reminder of like, hey, this did happen, don't forget about it, but also don't live there. Like, yes, you can have that remembering and that memory of like, that was really a rough time for me, but I mean, yes, it has been 10 years since my husband passed away, but I also look at it as it's only been 10 years, but now I'm remarried. I have 3 extra kids now because of it. And
like extra. The two were, they already came, but now these are like extras.
Yeah, they're the extra little goodies that we get to play with too. And it's different because it's like, my past, like in that past situation, I knew exactly what we were heading to. Like, it was going to be great and fun, and I would have never accomplished like the things that I've accomplished with that. And that was like the universe saying like, nope, we're not doing this right now. And yes, it was horrific, but now because of it, I can help people. I can help people deal with past, like the death and the trauma and all of that, because I know what it feels like. I deeply know what it feels like. And it's not so much like when we're doing like energy work, it's not me going in and being like, well, I know what this feels like, so this is how it's going to go. No, it's me going in and just being like, this is what you're holding on to. Is this absolutely what you want to hold on to? Because that's not something that you need to hold on to. This is these like negative energy blocks. That's what's going to really just kind of hinder you to get from where you're at to where you want to go. And that's partially why I was asking, like, are these people really people that you want in your life? Like, yes, they can physically be there, but emotionally and energetically, they're going to weigh you down. And you don't need that negative energy to pull you down. Like, yeah, they can be there fully 100%, like sitting right next to you all the time, but you don't need to have that. Like, you can put up those barriers, and when I'm around people, I often, it's like this clear energy shield, but it's like a one-way glass. So like, I can see through it and I can see like everything that's going on, but like if they're sending like negative things to me, it just bounces off of the glass and bounces right back at them, because it's like, I don't need that. You could take that shenanigans and bring it right back at yourself, because I don't want that.
Yeah, I think it's like the most mature adult version of like, well, I'm rubber and you're glue.
Yes.
So whatever you say bounces off me and back to you. But it really, no, and it's so true. And that's where I've found, and I am still somewhat jury's out on like the full power of like crystals and all that. But what I currently am at in terms of like my view on them is it's a very powerful, like with like quartz and like things like that are supposed to help like embody your energy and not let other things affect you so much. I have this clear quartz crystal that I wear, and when I wear it, it is around groups and people that I want to make sure that I'm not letting their energy affect me, even if it's someone I love and like on a regular basis, I'd be totally fine with it. Maybe they're dealing with something really gnarly that I'm just like, I'll be there for them, but I cannot take that on.
Yeah.
Or like anything like that. Wearing it is such a powerful reminder every time you get an emotional charge or even feel like that ramp up a little bit. You can kind of go back to that crystal or that totem or whatever is that reminder for you, and just say, okay, like I'm here to just like be there for them, but not like I'm not here to take on that energy. I think the other counterpart to that is if it's someone who's always making you feel the need to protect your energy, that's where you need to be like, all right, yeah.
And that's a solid, like that's part of your intuition right there. Like you realizing like, oh, bro, this is not okay. Like we should not be having this around us all the time. And I mean, that right there, like you making that connection, like saying, hey, if I have to wear this all the time to protect me from you, like that right there is like basic 101 realization and intuition, and making you like that is just everything. And that is like, that's the goal, you know. And if that is how you feel about work or activities that you're doing, or music that you're listening to, because I've done it with music. Like granted, yeah, I came up, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, thugging at hard rap, you know, like listen to all this stuff. And I listen to it now and I realize like where I'm at now. And I'm like, whenever I listen to it, I get into this just like this gross mood afterwards. And I'm like, all right, I guess we're just listening to Disney music today, because because that is just, it's not like, if I'm just driving around, like I don't want to be in that frame of mind, you know. And yes, you can have your music for certain things, like obviously listening at the gym, that's like a totally different thing, because it like you're like, oh, I'm gonna really hit it today. But you know, driving, you don't want to hit it, like you you don't want to be that person that's like, man, look, cop, I don't know what I did, but
the bass dropped and I just punched it. I don't know what to tell you.
You don't need that. So it's all of that, and just realizing everything inside of you, it's all energy and vibrations. And you know, a lot of that rap is very harsh negative vibrations. And it's just like, you have to realize that on the inside. And you also have to realize, like, if that's what you're going to listen to, you have to know how to guard it. You need to know how to balance that out of you. And same with people and everything else. Like, you just need to know where your limits are and how to kind of like grow that shield, so way you're listening to yourself, your intuition, all of that. And if that is meaning like wearing a crystal, you know, of a clear quartz, or having a rose quartz for love around you at all times, and then you realizing that you only bring that out around those certain situations, maybe those are your situations that you need to change. Like, that's what you need to not have in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always go back to, I call it energy transference. So being hyper aware of like any and all energy coming in. This is from like, do you sit in a room with natural light or all artificial light? Do you get outside and get fresh air, or are you stuck in an office all day? Are you up and moving, or are you sedentary? Are you eating nutritious foods or not? Are you around, you know, good people who are inspiring and have that good vibe energy? Or are you around people who you need that clear quartz necklace on you 24/7?
Yeah.
All of these things have their own micro or macro impact on your energy that you're holding in and the energy that you're then expressing out towards the world. And so that, I think everything that we've talked about goes back to first of all, get aware. So just start to understand where your energy's at, who you are in your authenticity, and then start building from there. Leverage a coach, someone who knows actually what they're doing. I've worked with coaches who have no idea what they're doing, and it's very uncomfortable, because then you're just getting touched by somebody and nothing is actually happening. Or you work with someone who actually knows what they're doing, and every time you walk away feeling like a white belt who just got their ass handed to them in the best way possible. Amy, thank you for coming on. I got one more question quick before we wrap up. You ready?
Yeah.
For you right now in your life, what's the next step in you becoming your best self?
I'm actually going through health coaching classes right now, and I want to go through life coaching. And I was actually just thinking about it today, because a lot of the things that I've been doing just in the massage is possibly becoming like a yoga teacher, because there are so many people that don't know how to stretch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just to have like a stretching class of just being like, all right, guys, we just need to open up. I'm always going through mentoring of some kind, energy-based wise or anything of that nature. And I feel like it's whenever you just don't, it's when you're like, I'm done learning, I'm good. Like, that's when you're stopping. And for me, I feel like anything that you are absolutely in love with, continue to learn it. even if you think you've got all the books, all the resources, all the people, there's still something out there that you're just like, yep, missed that one. Let's go get it. Because that's where you're going to learn so much more. And that's where I'm at, is that it's just not, it's never, you're never done learning. And I've finally figured that out. After 35 years, I've finally figured that out. And I am just excited to delve deeper into all of this, because it's like so many people are stuck, and it's sad to see how many people are stuck, and just to kind of get into helping everybody with that is, and it's not so much me doing it for them, it's me showing them how they can do it for themselves to functionally move on.
Yes. I am so excited for that. Well, thank you again for sitting down with me for a little bit, talking on energy. I am so thankful for what you're doing at the gym, what you're doing just for people, inspiring them, being that example of living in light, living in authenticity. Everything that we just went over today, prime example of it. So thank you for coming on. Everybody who's listening, if you've gotten to this point, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I have so much respect for people who sit down, take the time to learn from lovely, awesome human beings like Amy, and I guess a little bit myself, but I'm more just a questioner. But thank you. If you like this, there's a like button. If you know someone who is struggling just with stepping into their authentic self, if they're struggling with their energy, if they happen to be around the wrong people and they need to hear about that, go ahead and share this with them. And then any questions you have, just throw them in the comments. Until next time, peace.